I want to welcome you. I know it's taken a little bit to get online, to get engaged, so make sure if you haven't gotten connected to Pull Everywhere, you do that. When we do the exercises, we'll try to go through that, but I want to get us started. So this is what we're going to go through. The purpose of the class, basically, we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges and obstacles that you guys are facing in the field with negotiations, and that's where you're going to be using your Pull Everywhere, so it's really important to get connected. We're going to talk about different styles or approaches to negotiation, and for those of you in DOT highways, kind of how that matches with the DISC personality style tests and discussions that we've been having, and how that kind of relates to negotiation. We're really going to focus on a collaborative approach. The content of what we're talking about today is really how do we collaborate in a win-win solution and look at innovative solutions to get the best result or the best solution to your problem. We're going to go through a ton of exercise. Well, not a ton, 7. And they're negotiation pitfalls with examples and solutions. They've come from the Highway Division, mostly Art. Thank you, Art. And then what would a collaborator do? I want you to leave the session with that in mind. What would a collaborative negotiator do? Okay. So that's the outline of where we're going. So the purpose of the training, 1, during every project, there will undoubtedly be differences of opinions, interpretations, unexpected conflicts, unforeseen conditions, extenuating circumstances, all these things that might fulfill or might impact the fulfillment of the contracting parties to meet their responsibilities under the contract. So what do we have to do? We must reach agreement to move things forward. So that's 1. We want to reach agreement. 2, we're going to talk about understanding the approaches to negotiation and how that correlates with the DISC style. Next one. And then last, well, I think this is last, contracting and negotiation is often thought of as a game played by contractors in the state. But our negotiations always win-lose. What we want is a win-win, and collaboration is the key to getting there. So with the Highway Division, we've talked about the core values that the administration came up with, and we've all been talking about that within the districts. So what are the core values? You can chat it or read it. It's right there. So this session is going to tie to a couple of core values, Brandon. So accountability. Does anyone remember accountability? You can chat, you can scream. I know you guys know what this is. So accountability, negotiations, and being able to execute timely and successful negotiations minimize cost and time growth, right? So we can effectively and quickly solve problems. These are, again, for those people that are joining highway divisions, these are the core values: accountability, safety, community, innovation, and teamwork. Innovation. So when we talk about some of these solutions, they may not be in alignment with the contract. They may be a little bit outside of that. So we want to have open-minded negotiations that clear the way for an innovative solution. So innovation is part of this discussion. And then big one, teamwork, because without the contractor, we can't build anything, and without us, the contractor can't build anything. So we want to have respectful, professional negotiations that embody teamwork. So that's how these concepts that we'll be talking about today align with the Highway Division core values. Moving ahead, what are negotiations? So it's a discussion aimed at reaching agreement. That's it, right? So we want to make sure that we are reaching agreement so we can move the project forward. That's our ultimate goal. Okay, so now we're back to Pull Everywhere. Here we go. So this is a question to you guys, and this is a select all that apply. And again, if you haven't engaged in your Pull Everywhere, we're back to learning how to do that. We can do that right now. Here are some different scenarios. So when in the last 24 hours or 48 hours or a week, whatever, have you negotiated? Was it deciding what to eat for dinner? picking a movie, asking your boss for a raise, negotiating the price for a house or a car, asking neighbors to play their music loud, or sorry, less loud, or kids, or whatever, or sending your child to public or private school. What kind of negotiations have you engaged in? And select all that apply. Okay, we have a couple more questions. So I know that a couple people entered. And so as we go through, we'll explain how to do that right before the next polling session, but very good. So
actually, the last two were re-entering. They must have dropped off. Yeah.
Okay, good. Or going through a different method. Mm-hmm. Okay, so as you can see, you're negotiating, right? Most people are negotiating dinners. I actually started this like pre-made meal thing, so I'm so excited because I don't have to even ask about dinner. I just pop it in. So I don't have to do that anymore, but I do have to negotiate what we're going to watch and what we're going to do and all these other things. So the point is we're all negotiating. Next slide. So you are negotiators. I think sometimes we think, oh, I'm not the negotiator, so-and-so's the negotiator. But the point is that we're all negotiating. We're all negotiating in our lives every single day. We're negotiating what we're going to eat for dinner, or picking a movie, asking for a raise. I know in other sessions it was what projects you do and don't want to do. Negotiating a price for a car, asking neighbors to play music or don't play music, or be loud or don't be loud. All of these discussions are discussions aimed at reaching agreement. And I have to say, children are probably the best negotiators, right? They don't give up. They continue asking. They always find, well, what about this? And what if we do this? What is that? Was that a note to me? No need clear. Okay. Somebody asked. Okay, that was Charles. So we're all negotiators. Now, why do we negotiate? What's at stake? Next slide. Sorry. Okay. So at work, we have situations that require negotiation. So why are we negotiating? What's at stake? What do you guys deal with on a daily basis? COVID telework, excellent. Change orders, obviously, that's one of the, it's one of the things we automatically think of, but realize there's probably other things you negotiate within your job. Meetings, fitting in everybody, yes. Stewardship of public funds, how you should and shouldn't use them. Should we do this project? Should we not do? Who's buying lunch? Yeah. Excellent. We actually have an example of that. Fees, time schedules. What else? Consultant fees, yes. Work assignments. Whether you're working at night or not working at night, or can so-and-so work because I don't want to work at night. Sorry, not that you don't want to work. So we're always negotiating these things. Let's see. Yep. So somebody else said fee proposals. Excellent. And so those are all things we naturally think of. We naturally think of change orders. We naturally think of fee proposals. But what else might there be? Next slide. So when we were talking to DOT Highways, these were some other things that came up. These are other negotiations that they might be engaged in, whether it's delays with material submittals, especially long lead item. Contractor didn't realize it. Well, why didn't you realize it? Again, discussions aimed at reaching agreement. Delay to access site, lack of prompt payment for subcontractors, lack of understanding and differing interpretations of the contract, whether that's pre-construction documents, schedule requirements and updates, confusing minimal acceptable requirements that's expected, where they have an interpretation based on experience and division has an interpretation, or just the contractor doesn't understand the contract. And maybe they just don't want to understand the contract. So various ways that we are constantly negotiating on our projects, in our work life, work assignments, and even going to lunch. So what are some challenges? What are some challenges that you face, or what do you dislike about negotiations? Gets personal, exactly. The conflict when there's disagreement, right? And those that are with the highway division, where one of the segments coming up is productive conflict, because conflict's not bad. It usually helps us get it to a better solution. It's the confrontation, especially depending on your personality type, right? When the counterpart doesn't want to negotiate, it's my way or the highway. Not viewed as a win-win, that's right. They want a win-lose kind of situation. What else? Anything else? What you don't like about it? When negotiating with narrow-minded people, it's hard to achieve solutions acceptable to both parties. Yep. So, hidden agendas, yes, yep. So if somebody's not necessarily being honest, and they're all difficult situations. We're going to talk about 7 different types of situation when the contractor doesn't understand the contract documents, right? And all of these scenarios, we still need to reach agreement, right? Subjective. So if a contract requirement subjective, then they have an interpretation, you have an interpretation. Again, you still have to reach agreement. You have to resolve the conflict. So again, all of these discussions are discussions aimed at reaching some kind of agreement. Okay. Let me just go through this, and then Alan will take over the exercise. So there are different approaches to negotiations. There's avoidance or inaction. So that's when somebody just shuts down. They actually don't respond, right? And when we're going through this, I want you to think about the DISC model that we've been talking about with the personality styles, because they align pretty well to the approaches to negotiations. So there's the avoidance. So if you are a DISC student, go ahead and chat in the chat what you think, who might be an avoidance style. And then there's an accommodating or yielding style, where they have their interest, the counterpart has an interest, and they just concede to the other person. So what type of personality style might that be? Competitive, that's the one I love. Asserts one's interest over others. They want to win. What style might that align with? Then we have compromising. They give and take for a satisfactory outcome, with one or both parties giving something up. So, and this is without justification. They're just giving up. So it's a little bit like the accommodating or yielding. So what personality style might that be? And then the last one, and this is the one we're going to focus on today, is the collaboration. Examining and discussing the issue. Scrutinize. Solve the problem as partner or as a team, and reconcile your own concerns. Both concerns, ideally reaching a win-win, reaching a solution where you both can meet your interests. Sometimes that may not be in alignment with the contract. So it may necessitate a change to actually get it implemented, but you're looking at both sides' interests and finding a solution. And that's where the innovation comes in. How can you both win? And that, of course, is the best. Doesn't always happen, but that's the best approach that we're recommending to negotiations. Okay, so I don't see any chats on styles. So anybody, the avoidance? Do we have any avoidance people? What style might that be?
C.
Yay! The C style might be more of avoidance, right? What about accommodating, yielding, or compromising? What style might that be? For all my DISC stylistic people out there. And then the last one, well, actually the compromising, it could be an I as well. So the S's and I's are usually in that situation. They're more want to work with the other person. And then the D, of course, is kind of that competitive. They're the ones that always want to win, dominate, assert themselves. So I just wanted to tie, and of course you have the presentation in PDF, how the DISC styles kind of align with approaches to negotiation. So when you start to understand your style, be more cognizant that, okay, is that my approach to negotiation? And how can I be that collaborative negotiator? What would a collaborative negotiator do? Okay, so we're going to go in an exercise to hopefully, effectively, hopefully being the operative word, effectively show you what this looks like. Alan, take it away.
Okay, this is the slide I was waiting for. All right, so we're going to go to lunch, and everybody's done this, right? At some point in your offices when we used to all be in an office together. So I'm going to go to lunch with Jiro and let's see, who else is there anybody who wants to go to lunch? Kai wants to go to lunch.
I'm going to lunch.
Who else wants to go to lunch? Blaine, did you want to go to lunch?
Blaine is always hungry. He wants to go to lunch.
Blaine's always hungry. Ooh, Kaha wants to go to lunch.
Kaha?
He's raising his hand.
Okay. Kaha is going to go to lunch.
So we obviously have some definite types of people.
So Kaha can be my person.
Okay, I'm not looking at the one that has the name.
So Blaine, you're going to be the gluten allergy person, right, and you're going to represent a compromising negotiation style. Kaha'a, you're going to be frugal. You don't want to spend a lot of money, but you are going to address the competitive negotiation style. And then Alan, who's facilitating the exercise, she is a vegetarian, and she's going to represent an accommodating or yielding style. Sulin, I didn't hear you say anything.
Yeah, pick me.
Pick you. Oh, Sulin does want to go, but she doesn't really want to go to lunch. She doesn't want to take a long lunch break, and she is the avoidance or inaction style. And then I thought I heard Jiro. Jiro,
yeah,
there? Oh my gosh, Jiro is the meat lover, and he is going to be our collaborative negotiator in this exercise. So take it away. Where do you guys want to go? Kaha'a. Dominant Kaha'a.
So Jiro, you want to get us started?
Okay, come on, guys. This is like our quarterly office lunch. We only do this every 3 months. Any ideas? Where do you want to go?
Yeah, so I didn't really know I needed to participate by raising my hand, but because I do, and I don't have a lot of money, I suggest we go to McDonald's. They've got a $1 menu.
Well, that's a choice, Kaha. Okay, we got you down for that.
Wherever we go, I have a gluten allergy, so I cannot eat any kind of wheat gluten because if not, we're gonna have like disaster pants.
Well,
Okay,
there's this place I've been trying to get to called Peace Cafe that has a bunch of vegetarian dishes, and I'm sure there's this tempeh katsudon that is sounding really good.
Hey,
and so that's on rice, so that should help.
Sulin, what about you?
I just want to go someplace that doesn't take a long time. I have to get back to work.
Okay, so you want someplace close.
Kind of fast.
Okay, my vote is for Ruth Chris. You know, last time we had this event, it was a really terrific time. We had a good dialogue, even though Kai was talking a lot, but that's okay.
Well, I guess they have salad, don't they?
That's why we
I'm always
didn't invite Kai
eating
this
salad.
time.
Yeah. Well, I don't think any of those places have $1 menu, guys. I know McDonald's is fast food, right? So Sulin's needs will be met. Gluten free.
Yes.
You can take the hamburger bun off of the $1 cheeseburgers. You want space. Jiro, McDonald's got a lot of space. They let you sit there forever. There's people who do. So.
Okay, but Kaha, you gotta admit now, the meat at Ruth Chris is terrific. Okay, it's well worth the. And this is just lunch. It's not dinner. So,
Mhm.
you know, it's a little cheaper. So,
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
so Blaine, are you in for Ruth Chris?
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, okay. Okay, but Kaha, that's
Yeah.
uh, a little much
Pricey.
for you.
It's a little pricey for me. I heard McDonald's the pink meat that they used to serve, they're not serving it anymore. They turned it red. So for
Well, we
$1
should go there then.
now,
Ugh.
you're really getting a
Okay.
good deal now. Yeah.
Can we
Then we should
find
go there too then.
someplace in between?
Yeah.
Can
Blaine, I'll buy
we
you
find
yours
someplace?
at $1. So
Okay, sounds good.
if you just submit to my, if you just yield to my suggestion, I buy it for you. I'll buy it for you.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good.
You know what? How about we talk about ask Sulin again if she has some place that's maybe closer to the office, so that might be in the middle of McDonald's versus Ruth Chris.
I'll
Sulin, you
go
got
where
any ideas?
no, I'll go wherever you guys want to go. It's up to you guys. What I'll agree with wherever we decide.
Okay, Sulin, we really want you to be there now. Okay. Now, okay. How about instead of all these fancy restaurant versus McDonald's, how about something? What about like Chinese? You guys got any preferences for Chinese?
Well, that
Yeah,
sounds good.
pandas, as long as it's pandas, because it's Chinese on a budget. Yeah, Pandas
Okay,
Express.
Kaha. Kaha, I
Panda's
can
fast.
tell you. Yes.
I
Okay.
guess I could get a veggie dish there.
It has
Okay.
veggie dishes, it has meat dishes,
Yeah.
gluten-free options,
Yeah, yeah.
close to the office.
Are you guys okay with that?
As long as
And,
Kaha's
and
still
Sulin,
paying
if we
because
go to
it's not
Pandas, are you
McDonald's.
gonna go? Or what?
Yeah, I'll make time to go.
Okay. And then Blaine, what did you say? What did you just say, Blaine?
As long as Kaha's still paying because he's gonna pay at McDonald's. So
Okay, I think we're still on Dutch
we're
treats
good.
for everybody. So, okay, so Pandas,
Okay.
Panda Express.
Yeah, Panda
You
works.
decided? Okay.
Woohoo!
Pandas.
Good job, guys. Okay, so thank you. Round of applause for the participants. Yay. So what just happened? What just happened? Any comments? Any chats? Let me see. Let me pull up the chat. So Blaine was well, let's do Sulin first, right? So she wasn't saying a whole lot. She would only speak when spoken to, right? So kind of avoiding it, but yeah, I'll do whatever. Accommodating was Blaine. So he had his gluten
No, that was
allergy.
me.
Oh, what was he was compromising, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, it's compromising.
yeah.
So both of those styles are a little bit difficult for me, but they both are looking to keep the peace. They're conceding with other people rather than asserting their interests. They're giving up. So in this scenario, there was kind of a situation or a solution that met everybody. And again, that's the innovative solution we want to look for. It doesn't always happen. And then, of course, Kaha'a kind of just kept pushing his agenda of, I want it to be cheap. Let's go Panda. I want it McDonald's, cheap, cheap, cheap. So in the discussion, Jiro was asking questions, trying to find a solution that would reconcile all of those concerns. And in this scenario, it was the Chinese buffet. Yeah. So it's cheap. It allows people to get a variety of options. Ideally, they have gluten-free options. So it's a solution that meets everybody's interests. So I hope that exercise kind of demonstrates how sometimes you'll see people that are just giving in, which might be yielding, compromising, some people just not responding, which is that avoidance. And again, that doesn't help us reach agreement to move the project forward. The competitive, where they're constantly pushing their agenda. I think when we talked about dislikes of negotiation, that was one of them, right? That they just keep pushing, pushing, pushing. But we want to look at a collaborative approach. And so what does that mean? What does that look like? We tried to show you what that looks like, but let's see if we can kind of further describe that. So again, this is another, it's so what is collaboration? Again, it's collaboration for a fair and equitable settlement with minimal confrontation, because a lot of times that's what people dislike about it, right? So how are we going to do that? I think some of the other answers where it gets personal. So number one is separating the people from the problem. And since Art's on, I'll give him kudos because Art's always doing this, right? Don't make it personal. How do you do that? I mean, we're all people, so how do we not make it personal? So put yourself in their shoes. Try to empathize. Understand their position. So separate the people from the problem. Focus on interests and not positions. So in this scenario, it would have been, so gluten-free is the interest. Not that Blaine wants a certain type of food. It is the interest of being gluten-free. It's the interest of being frugal and economical. Not that Kaha'a wants McDonald's, right? McDonald's is just a solution to the frugality interest. So focus on the interest and not the position, and ask questions. Understand what they're wanting. Confirm their understanding. So what I'm hearing is you want to go to McDonald's. It's not necessarily for the fries. It's actually because the dollar menu, right? And you're saying you want the dollar menu because you want to minimize whatever you spend. So trying to ask those questions, confirm your understanding, and then acknowledge those interests. Okay, I understand. I see your point. That's a good point. Okay, so that's a little bit. Invent options for mutual gain. Again, the ideal situation is you have an interest, I have an interest, and we come up with a solution that successfully meets both of those interests. And sometimes it's going to be outside of the contract, depending on what the interests are. Insist on objective criteria. And I think this is another way to make it less personal, right? We're talking about where we want to go to lunch, not how cool Sulin's boss is, right? Not that Sulin doesn't ever want to leave the office. We want to talk about lunch. So lunch, where to go is objective, takes it away from the person. And so in the exercises that we're going to do in a little bit, how do we identify that objective criteria? How do we take this away from a personal discussion and make it more objective so you can work together to get that collaborative solution? Okay, so this is what collaboration is. And I feel like these two slides is like the crust of the whole collaboration. So if you can just keep these slides as notes, and remember, your style is going to have you tending towards one approach, but we always want to try to bring you back to collaboration. And honestly, I'm a work in progress. I'm a high D, so I always want to do that, more assertive approach. But when we collaborate, we get better solutions. So how do we do that? Again, ask questions to understand their side. If I were that person, what would my interest be? What would I be asking? What would I want? Identify the interest. When you think you know what it is, repeat it and ask, do I understand correctly, right? So frame your question as wanting to help get a resolution that is favorable for them. So in our lunch scenario, it might be, so what I hear you saying, Jiro, is you want a meat place. I mean, you're talking about higher end, but you would be okay with the meat place. I really want to find a place that has meat that you would enjoy. So what other places might you enjoy? Okay, so it's not about what I want, it's about what they want, and how can I help you find a place? How can I help you support your change order so I can recommend it to Federal Highways and we have enough justification to get it approved? How can I get more information on your time extension so that we can support that change request? How can I get more information on a work assignment so that I can, give you the job or project that you want? Framing it in a favorable resolution towards the other party will diffuse the situation, and then it's like, oh, you're doing this to help me, instead of that confrontation. So again, minimizing confrontation. And then communicate assertively, but without signing blame. And this is probably the hard part, right? How can I get information to substantiate your request? How can I? So the action is on me. How, what other information can I get so that we can write up a justification that'll be favorable towards this change order? So rather than, I need you to give me this. I need you. So even when you say you, right, you're pointing. Those are all very confrontational body actions and words and things. So let's turn it around and let's reframe our questions. So collaborative, that's the 2 slides. And then we are going to run into the exercises. So everybody's got their poll everywhere, right? So these are some of the things we're going to talk about, and they were the challenges that you identified, actually. So what if the contractor has all the leverage? One side of the negotiation is unprepared or doesn't understand the contract. What if the negotiation is stuck because of a relatively minor disagreement? Or the other person is dishonest or deceitful. The other party reacts, yelling and emotional outbursts. Or one side isn't listening. They're just not paying attention. Maybe they're distracted with another project, or there is no record of the negotiation. So all of these things, what are we going to do? So I think the key with all of these are there is no right or wrong answer, unless, of course, it's what I say. No. Right or wrong? Okay, so we're going to go through these. It's point of discussion. We'll have some questions. And again, we're going to use poll everywhere, but definitely use the chat so that you can answer the questions or provide input, because this is kind of the discussion portion of the class. Okay, so the first pitfall, contractor has all the leverage in a negotiation. So here we go. It's a bridge project. It required a structural engineer. However, Highway D was unable to procure a contract for the necessary services. Contractor XYZ was already under contract and they couldn't start work. So the contractor submitted a claim for $500,000, $500,000, stating that they had dedicated staff to work on the project and had turned down other work. So the key to this whole thing is, what is the next course of action to take? So again, option A is counter with a lower monetary offer to begin the negotiation process to see how serious the claim is, or ask the contractor to provide documentation to support their claim, substantiate their claim. Or work with the contractor to meet the need of having a structural engineer while moving the project forward, or do nothing. Eventually there'll be another change order that we combine this delay with. So what would be the next course of action? So next being the operative word, and again, there's no right or wrong answer. And I think we have, what is that? Around 40 people on the line, so 45. So hopefully we get 30 answers or so. I think you can only select one answer for this. And while you're polling your answer, I want you to think about what negotiation styles are represented by the answers here. Okay, so the majority of people said work with the contractor to get documentation to substantiate their claim. Very good. And then have a meeting while moving the project forward. So again, both very good responses. Can you go back to the, so we had what, 21 people? Ooh, they got 22 people. So B or C is good. I think when we were kind of drafting these things, yeah, go to the slideshow itself. So the first thing I want you to think about is, what is the negotiation styles here? So what is negotiation style A? And what is negotiation style D? So we just talked about the negotiation styles. So go back, grab your slides. Do you remember what those were? So what do you think A is? What do you think D is? And you can chat it or you can yell it out. But this is the whole, this exercise part is where I really want you to think about what are the styles, how do you identify those, and how are we going to get to a collaborative approach? What was A? Counter with a lower monetary value to begin the negotiation process. What might that be? It's not avoidance, right? Yes, thank you, competitive. Yes. So it's not avoidance, it's not compromising, but it's also not collaborative, right? So that, I would say A is more competitive. What about D? Do nothing. Eventually there'll be another change order. What is D? So the avoidance, very good. Yeah. So D is kind of the avoidance. Collaborative is C, is more like C, right? Work with the contractor to meet the need of having the structural engineer, because the interest is to move the project forward, right? The next question I want you to think about is, what is the contractor's interest? What in this scenario? So Brandon, go to the next click. Okay, so that was the first one, whether the negotiation, click again. So put yourself in the contractor's shoes. What is the contractor's interest? They have been put to work, they've been given an NTP, they're under contract, and they can't start work. What's their interest? What do you think? Maintaining cash flow. Yes. Right? So they're under contract. They have to maintain cash flow. They've put resources to this project, and now they can't bill because they can't start. So they're in a predicament, right? So in these kind of scenarios, especially when the contractor has all the leverage, also think about, what is their position? What is their interest? Now, what is an objective criteria? You can click, Brandon. What is an objective criteria that could be used here? And then I think Art's kind of nailing it. Open to reasonable costs. So what might that criteria be? So again, it's not that contractor's always trying to get money and then it's our fault. So, you know, we're putting I and they in that scenario. So what would be objective? And I think Art Art brought up what I was thinking, is the reasonable cost. You know, there's a delay here. Obviously, it's our fault. So let's focus on what is a reasonable cost. Maybe looking at a daily cost, looking at how many people they have. So we're not so much focused on the claim and taking it personally, but we're looking at what is the objective criteria that we can use in this scenario so they can focus, we can focus, and understanding each other's interests. And then the last question would be, how would you frame a question as a collaborative negotiator? Anybody? So Kaha'a mentioned define their costs so that you can determine what's fair and reasonable, right? So looking at the cost, how many people, break it down, use that as your objective criteria. It's not about us being at fault. It's not about them waiting on us. Take that emotion out of it. And anyone, is there anyone that could frame a question as a collaborative negotiator? So those people that answered B, how would you ask for that documentation? So one way to say it is, Mr. Contractor, you didn't give me enough information, so I don't understand what your costs are, right?
Ooh, you used the word you, though.
I know. So would that be a collaborative negotiator? A lot of times that's what we do, right? We say your proposal, your documentation, your submittal. So how would we reframe that question? How can I better understand what your costs are? Right. So it's, instead of you, it's I, right?
I.
How can we get more information so that I can substantiate your claim, so that Art will approve it and Kaha'a will approve it? You know, we want to make sure that we get all the information and we can get this approved. So you see the difference? It's not so much your submittal, your this, your that. It's like, how can I get additional information so that we can get this approved? Okay. So just kind of think about how you're addressing those things in these negotiations and how you might be able to reframe the questions to get a more favorable negotiation, avoid and minimize confrontation, and really try to emphasize that collaborative approach, but teamwork concept. Okay, so let's summarize this. Contractor has all the leverage is the pitfall. So the majority was B. So again, develop alternatives, think outside the box. So it may not be per contract, but maybe we can, that was the C answer, right? Collaborative, how do we address the need for getting a structural engineer? Maybe there's a way to do that with the contractor, maybe not, I don't know, but at least let's try to tackle the problem. Again, empathize and strategize, especially if you're at fault, right? So we don't want to be blaming them because it's our fault. Use objective criteria. In this case, it might be the cost. You might be looking at what's the daily cost or what is the impact. Can I get more information to substantiate this because I don't quite understand it? And then look for fair and reasonable instead of a deal. Remember, time is money and our objective is to move things forward. So again, the purpose of this is so we can reach agreement to move the project forward. And I think everybody wants that, right? We don't want to belabor these issues and we want to emphasize teamwork. Okay, any questions on that? So that's kind of how we're going to do these exercises. We got 6 more. Ready, set, go. Negotiation pitfall, not prepared or poor planning on both sides, not knowing the goals or the priorities, not knowing the limitations, the budget, the bottom line, the authorities, not having sufficient time, not having an agenda. So all these things, not being prepared. So contractor submits a method statement. In this case, it's more not understanding too. A method statement, which for those of you that participated in the scheduling training, we talked about method statements and the pre-construction submittals required for this schedule. So this is part of it. Now you're going to ask for a method statement. Calvin rejects it because the submittal contractor doesn't understand, as a similar method statement had been satisfactorily accepted on a past project, what is the best course of action for DOT to take next, for Calvin to take next? What's Calvin going to do? Calvin, what are you going to do? So the first one is accept method statement, but make it a note make a note to the files that it's incomplete. The method statement is not a critical submittal, and so it shouldn't hold up work. Okay, so that's A. B is reference the appropriate spec session or contract section in a written response to the contractor to support his position and restate the state's determination. Refuse to discuss the issue with the contractor further. The state could take additional liability by addressing inconsistency with past projects, or terminate the contract. The state should not accept when a contractor has a bad attitude. So, which one should we do next? Not chatting. Okay, so B, is that what we said? I think that's what we said. Reference the appropriate spec or contract in a written statement to the contractor to support his position and restate the state's determination. So we want to address him, let him know, educate him, right? Make sure he understands the contract, reiterate his understanding, and then restate the state's determination. Okay, so again.
So why would we need to put that in writing? Why not just like have a conversation with him about that?
We could. That might be the first thing. A is yielding. Okay, so one of the questions I had asked was what types? So A might be yielding. What is the competitive? Actually, Brandon, can you go back to the slide and click? So which one is competitive? Which would be the competitive approach? Might be a couple, actually. C. Yes, refuse to discuss the issue. So Alan's talking about it, right? Which might be a little more collaborative, but C might be more competitive. What about D? So I think like Alan's alluding to, talking to them, educating them, that leads us to more of a collaborative approach. So,
but I would say also that the benefit of the written response is for clarity, right? When it's in writing, there's no dispute what was said, right? Because it's there. So I was just sort of asking a question I knew the answer to, but it is good to try to make an attempt to talk about it, but follow up always with the written write-up of what was said.
Mm-hmm. So we talked a little bit about what the various style might be. So what would a collaborative approach be? Again, like Alan's referring to, you could have that discussion and then follow up with the letter. What else would D is avoiding? Yes, because they don't want to do anything. So what would a collaborative negotiator do? Like Alan suggested, you might talk to them. You might talk to them, understand, are they, ask them questions. What would you do? If you were that person, the contractor just turns something in that doesn't make sense, you might call them and then follow up with the written response, right? To make sure you document it, but at least you're trying to understand their interest, understand their position. Now, go ahead and click the next one, because this is the other thing I want you to think about. What innovative solution could you come up with that would meet both parties' interest? So this is the last one. Because again, as a collaborator, we want to understand their interests. So that might be the phone call with them. So if you put yourself in their shoes or understand what their issue is, what might their issues be? Because we want to make sure we understand their position. So what might the contractor's issue be? Part of the lesson is to document, even to follow up with a verbal conversation, correct? But the other part of collaborating is understanding the person's interests. So what might their interests be? They may not understand the scope. They may not understand the contract, right? They're not prepared. Okay, so your interest is to enforce the contract. Their interest is, well, we didn't understand it. So how might you marry those two? Usually we're not supposed to start work until we have all this information. Is there anything we might be able to do to move the project forward to meet our interests and help educate them at the same time? So those are the things I want you to think about. Alan, can you think of anything, some innovative solution that we might be able to do to move the project forward while enforcing the contract and helping them get their bearings? Provide examples. So Art's saying provide examples of the method statement.
Yeah, it's not necessarily innovative, but it's like show them what it looks like, right? Mm-hmm. Give them their answer that they could then not really exactly copy, but use as their guide to come up with their method statements.
And even if it's a contract requirement, Kaha'a is saying we could help them understand why we need the information and maybe when we need the information. So what else might we be able to do? What if we phased it?
Yeah, we could tell them, okay, let's take a look at the first few activities that we need to really clarify. Because maybe some of the later activities he hasn't even figured out completely yet, right? So I know him to get started with what he does know.
I like that, Art. Have them contact us for training. So often the requirements of the contract spec has a why behind it, so it's good business practice. Yes. So again, people understanding the why. Part of this is not being prepared, not understanding. So we want to make sure we have that collaborative approach, that we're helping them understand it, that we're not being competitive, that we're not avoiding, that we're working towards a solution. And like Alan's saying, maybe we can focus on first couple phases, document that discussion occurred with your position, and then maybe even document the agreement moving forward. We're going to look at the first 2 phases because that's where they have more detail. And then a month before we start phase blah, 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 they will submit, or we'll sit down and have that discussion. So it may not 100% meet the requirements, but it's an innovative solution to help the work get going and you meet your need of understanding the first phases of work. So again, keep your mind open to innovative solutions. As a project engineer, you have a lot of responsibility as well as autonomy to look for those kind of solutions. It may not be hardcore, this is what it is. And so that's why we all get the big bucks, right? Okay, so wrapping this exercise up. Not being prepared. The more you know, the better armed you are. Of course, knowing and understanding your contract. Like Art said, examples. There are a lot of examples for DOT highways on the wiki site. We have actually posted examples, and specifically of method statements, because this is a real life scenario that you guys are dealing with requiring more of the scheduling pre-construction documents. You're actually getting these questions. What is a method statement? I've never done this before. So make sure you use the wealth of experience that's around you, your construction engineers, engineers like Alex and Keith have been around, have a lot of experience. Use those people. We're all here to help. Be prepared, understand the contract, and use that as your objective criteria, right? So it's not about, well, you don't know what you're doing. It's about how can we help you and give you more detail on method statements so we can get that information. Admit when you need more time to research and acknowledge their concerns. Be flexible and focused but consistent.